The meta is constantly changing, and so is the best team composition you could be playing. But whether it's triple support or 5 DPS, what exactly is the best and worst composition? Well, a lot of people have theories, but let's get down to the actual truth by breaking down the pick and win rates of every single type of composition from all ranks and comparing that to the highest ranks of play, so we know exactly what's best, what's worst, and really break down some of these narratives about triple support and how to beat it. But it says that only 10% of you are subscribed, so if you haven't subscribed, let me know why down below, and let me know what video I can make that would earn that subscription from you, and I'll get right on it. Anyways, let's jump right into the video. So we're going to go through every single composition and talk about the most dominant composition structure and composition structures that you're playing that is severely underperforming and could be holding you back. Now we're going to start with all ranks first, and then we're going to compare it to the highest ranks of play, and you would be surprised how similar they are. But first off, let's talk about the comps that basically ensure you lose, compositions that have a 30% win rate or less. First one would be 2 Vanguards, 4 Strategists at only a 17% win rate. Who's playing this comp? Realistically, it's terrible. You're not going to win. 1 Vanguard, 1 Duelist, 4 Strategist. Another composition people just generally aren't playing. 3 Vanguard, 2 Duelist, 1 Strategist. Another composition that people just don't play, and it doesn't make sense. There's too much health total there for you to heal it with just a single strategist. And then the 3 Duelist, 3 Strategist composition at a 23.6% win rate. You're not winning with this composition, and I would highly recommend you avoid it. Now, back to back, we have 2 compositions that have about a 30% win rate. One of them has 4 Duelists, and one of them has 3 Duelists, and they both have 1 Strategist. Compositions that just don't function. It seems that if you want to have a reasonable win rate, a reasonable composition, 2 Strategists is the absolute minimum that you can run, because anything else just has an abysmal win rate across all ranks. It's not recommended at all. Now, above that, surprisingly is 4 Duelists and 2 Strategists. So it's actually better to play 2 Strategists in a composition than it is to play a tank. Like, if you have to choose between playing 1 Strategist and 1 tank, or 2 Strategists and 1 tank, by the numbers, it's better to play no tank, which is kind of interesting. So yeah, tanking, not that important. I would just say most importantly that you're not going to be able to keep up a tank and all these characters as 1 strategist. Like, 1 strategist just doesn't give you enough resources to function. So yeah, now granted, 4 Duelists and 2 Strategists only has a 33% win rate, so it's not that high, but it is something to note that it's better than playing with 1 Strategist. Now, I think we finally crossed the threshold, though, to real compositions. So let's talk about some of the real compositions that still don't win all that much. So first up is 3 Vanguards, 1 Duelist, 2 Strategists. Having 3 tanks, it's just consistently not winning that many games. A very low win rate. Honestly, it's only slightly more than rocking no tank at all. So if you're thinking about, playing 3 tanks in a composition, I don't recommend it, especially if you're playing 3 tanks and 1 Duelist. Now, quite a bit of a win rate bump from that, so about 4% win rate bump from that, is the 3 Vanguard, 3 Strategists. So this is like Overwatch GOATs. This is the composition that has no DPS. And, in theory, this could be a composition that could, win, especially if someone like Wolverine is banned. But it's not winning all that much. That's still a rather low win rate. And also, something that's interesting is it is one of the lowest picked or played compositions, period. I think that's probably obvious because people are just looking for a reason to lock DPS. Vanguards and Strategists are in short supply, so you're not going to get this composition that much. And it actually has, instead of 2 Vanguards, 4 Strategists, besides that, it's the least picked composition across all ranks. So that's pretty interesting, but I wouldn't recommend this one anyways. Now, all of those compositions we went over are compositions that are a bunch of nonsense. They're not compositions I would recommend playing or composition structures I would recommend playing. So these next 4 are comps that you see all the time, and they have varying win rates that might shock you about how viable they are. So 44.2% win rate, the lowest out of these 4, is 2 Vanguards, 1 Duelist, and 3 Strategists. This is a composition that is played a ton. People love rocking, a Magneto Strange with a Namor and then 3 supports, right? People love playing this composition, but it's actually, out of the real compositions on this list, it's the lowest win rate across all ranks. And you might be wondering why this is the lowest. Like, it seems like a reasonable composition, right? You have so many support ults, you have a duelist, you have 2 tanks. It's reasonable. Now, the funny thing here is this actually goes up quite a bit in win rate at the highest ranks of play and is played a lot more successfully at the highest ranks of play. From my understanding of this, we'll compare it directly to Eternity in a second, but my understanding of this is that 3 strategists and 2 vanguards don't apply a ton of pressure. Primarily, you're winning team fights based on support ultimates and tank ultimates, and these things need to be executed very well, and there's a ton of room for error. So we're seeing right here that in the lower ranks of play, people are just kind of locking this composition, and they're not succeeding nearly as much as people are in the highest ranks of play. Because if we compare the 2 vanguard, 1 duelist, and 3 strategist composition at a 44% win rate, once again, in all ranks, we compare that to an Eternity level, and now, all of a sudden, it's all the way up to a 48.37%, and it actually cuts over 2 other types of compositions we'll talk about in a second. So it's a reasonable composition, and it seems that it would make sense on paper, but people are messing it up in a lot of ranks. They're not winning a lot with this triple support 2 vanguard composition, so something to consider. Now, the next leg up for all ranks is the 1 vanguard, 2 duelist, 3 strategist composition at a 45.69% win rate. This is a composition that is also just not really winning all that much, but it's a common one. So they're picked very similar in the amount of times they're being played, whether it's 1 vanguard or 2 vanguards, and you're just kind of subbing out that duelist role. Both of them are reasonable and fine, but the interesting thing here is if we compare all ranks, it's actually winning more with 1 vanguard, but if you compare that to Celestial level, you're actually winning more with 2 vanguards. The 1 vanguard actually has less win rate, all the way down to 44% relative to the 2 vanguards at 49. So it's actually a crazy disparity here when we talk about high rank versus average rank, where average rank, or the culmination of all ranks, it's actually higher win rate to play 1 vanguard, but at the highest levels, it's lower win rate. And here's the reason why this composition has a huge flaw. The main thing that this composition doesn't do well is it doesn't charge ultimates well. Like, you have 3 strategists, and you don't have enough HP to charge up these ultimates consistently when you're playing only 1 vanguard. Now, that doesn't really matter when people aren't perfectly capitalizing on the moment and they're not punishing you for not having it. But, you know, if you take a 1 vanguard and 3 strategist composition, and then you take a 2 vanguard, 2 strategist composition, both those strategists are going to get their ultimates way faster than those 3 strategists. In addition to that, really good triple support characters are not seeing a ton of play in the average rank. So I would say characters like Loki, characters like Adam Warlock, characters even like Mantis don't see as much play as some of the other strategists in triple support compositions, and there are pretty bad triple support composition setups when you don't have enough proactivity. Like, if you're playing a Cloak and Dagger, an Invisible Woman, and a Luna Snow, you have so much raw healing and you're sacrificing utility. If you only have 1 tank to heal up, and if that tank's like a Magneto that is not going to take a lot of damage, you're not building up these ultimates very quickly at all. And you would much rather have some type of offensive capability or some playmaking capability in that slot. So that's where you see a big disparity here. Now, going into the best compositions, these are the 2 types of compositions that I would recommend for all ranks because they have the highest win rate. First up, at 49.38% win rate, we have 1 vanguard, 3 duelists, and 2 strategists. This composition just does fairly well across all ranks, and there's several reasons for this. Number 1, 2 strategists and 1 vanguard, you're going to have enough support ultimates. You know, you're going to build them up reasonably well. 3 duelists are going to create a lot of pressure. Duelists are just, in general, there's a lot of duelist players. 3 duelists can bait out support ults, they can get picks, they can win fights that don't revolve around ultimates. So yeah, this composition actually is reasonably good. And if you look at a composition, if you look at your composition that's 1 vanguard, 3 duelists, 2 strategists, and you're like, no, we need an extra vanguard and we need an extra strategist, get off these duelists. Well, actually, the win rate is 5% almost less. So you're really actually putting yourself at a numbers disadvantage just not trying to play the 3 duelist composition, because by the numbers, it's just better. It's just flat out better across all ranks. There are going to be some differences there, but you also got to think about, if by the numbers it's better, you definitely don't want to play a composition that performs worse on average if you're making 2 duelist players fill to strategist and vanguard. Now you're going to take a composition that on paper is better, and you're changing it to try to make a composition that you think is better, but wins less, and then you're making people fill, you're just going to lose. You're going to lose that game almost assuredly, I promise. Now, something that's interesting, though, is undisputably the highest win rate composition, and it's not even close. 53.16%, jumping all the way from 49.38%. So a huge jump is 2-2-2. 2 Vanguards, 2 Duelists, 2 Strategists. Now, if we also look here and we compare that to the Celestial level of picks, it's the same thing. 2 Vanguards, 2 Duelists, 2 Strategists at a 53.98% win rate. And the next highest is 2 Vanguards, 1 Duelist, 3 Strategists at 49.43. So 2-2-2 across every rank bracket, literally every rank bracket, is far and away the best composition, and it's not particularly close. It doesn't matter what rank you're in. If you're playing 2-2-2, you are, 3% better than the second best composition minimum, typically 4 or 5. And in the case of, like, we go to all ranks and we compare 2 Vanguards, 2 Duelists, 2 Strategists win rate to 2 Vanguards, 1 Duelist, 3 Strategists, a composition that people like they think is reasonable. It's 53% to 44%. Like, we're talking about a 7% swing. If your main hero had a 7% less win rate, that would just be terrible. I mean, most characters occupy like about a 50%, a little less than 50% win rate. You take 7% away, that's terrible. So what am I saying here? I'm saying that 2-2-2 is by far, by the numbers, the best composition no matter what rank you're in. I know people like to talk about this triple support composition, but by the numbers, it's not winning anywhere near as much as 2-2-2. 2-2-2 is winning far more, and at the highest levels, 2 Vanguards, 3 Strategists, 1 Duelist is a reasonable comp at about a 49% win rate. It's actually better to play 1 Vanguard and 3 Duelists in a duo support composition, or 1 Vanguard, 2 Duelists in a triple support composition. And I want to just use this as a moment to talk about the narrative of triple support, where it doesn't really matter what rank you're in. 2-2-2 is winning more. It's winning more than triple support. It's winning far more. And another narrative I want to break down, this one's going to be a bit rough, is people talk about certain supports and they say you can only play that in triple support. So like you think of a Rocket, right? People say, oh, Rocket's terrible. You can only play Rocket in triple support. But Rocket has a 53% win rate about from all ranks, and triple support is losing much more than Rocket's win rate. So you think about it that way. There's either 2 solutions there. It's either Rocket is succeeding in duo support to a high degree, more than people think, which I think is true, or Rocket is making up the bulk of the triple support wins. So it's one of the two, right? You can't have both. And it's funny how there's a lot of narratives that get built kind of based on vibes and feelings. But then when you look at the win rates, it tells a different story, like a much different story. Now, last week, got to talk about is why is 2-2-2 the best composition? Why is this the one that is consistently performing the highest across all ranks? Why is this the composition that is seeing the most play in pro play? What about 2-2-2 makes sense and is reasonable? Well, it's funny because this was the original composition that people thought was good, and then people tried a whole bunch of different stuff, and I think some people have moved away from it. But 2-2-2 just has the right amount of balance of a lot of things. So for one, supports can reasonably get their ultimates off of 2 tanks. They provide enough resources to keep up 2 tank front lines as long as you're not playing a weird support composition like Adam Loki. And you're going to build up ultimates at a consistent rate. You're going to keep your front line up at a consistent rate. 2 tanks allow each other to play off each other, and no one has to just be perma on the front line. There's a lot of combinations of that, but you typically get to have someone that holds down the front line, and then another tank that gets to be a bit more proactive and be a bit more aggressive, or both of them could be more aggressive than they would just with the singular tank. Especially as tanks get better and better, being able to really leverage that extra bit of space and presence to get kills and create valuable plays, I think is really, really important. And then 2 DPS is super important as well, because one of the things about this solo DPS compositions that I don't like, and I think is really one of the reasons why it doesn't win a lot in the average rank, is because you need people that can pressure out ultimates in the mid-fight. You want people that can pressure out ultimates. You need people that can pressure out ultimates in the pre-fight. You want people that can actually generate ultimate advantage by killing people before they get to use them, or forcing an ultimate early, or winning a fight without an ultimate. Duelists do that to a reasonably high margin. Now, they don't have the most powerful ultimates relative to supports, of course, but you get to make up for that by winning a lot of fights in situations that ultimates are not included. And they're one of the best neutral characters that don't fight with ultimates. Out of all roles, duelists are definitely the best at that. They provide a ton in the quote-unquote neutral game. And so I think this perfectly is like a balanced composition that provides a good amount of ultimate generation, pressure, and mitigation that I think is just basically the best you can do. And that's why it's winning at such a high margin, because that's just the case. Also, I think you're more naturally going to get, especially as we start to climb the ranks, people that can slot into 2-2-2 easier than playing something like triple support one duelist. You're going to have people filling way too much, and I think that's going to create more losses than it actually solves. Like, sure, oh, we need double support ult or triple support ult, defensive ult. Well, you put people on these characters, it's not enough to win. We're seeing that. It's not enough to win. So don't just be forcing this triple support comp. It's not even the best comp. It's not even close to the best comp. So I really want to make sure that you understand to not play it at all. Now, I did talk about why I like 2 duelists and triple duelists in the average rank, but why does, when we talk about Celestial, how come one duelist is actually viable? Like, why is one duelist a reasonable composition at the highest rank with 2 tanks and 3 supports? Why is that something that's actually passable? Why does that work when in the average rank it really doesn't? I touched on it before, but I think most importantly than that is the strategist compositions. The triple strategists are just built better. The compositions are built better. So you're not going to be playing Luna, Invisible Woman, and freaking Cloak and Dagger. You're going to see a lot more Loki Adam Luna, Loki Adam Rocket, Adam Mantis, and an Invisible Woman. Whatever composition, it's just going to be supports that are providing more pressure. Because once again, we talked about when you sacrifice the duelist, you have less pressure and less ability to bait out ultimates pre-fight or generate a pick pre-fight. But strategists can do that too. There's some strategists that do that a lot better than others. And I like it when a triple support composition can still do those things while at the same time still have these powerful ultimates. So they can kind of make up for the lack of a duelist by being more offensive. But if you're all pure defensive supports or you're not aggressive enough, you're really going to feel that lack of a duelist. So I think that Celestial players and high-level players understand this better, so that's why they can make it work when your average rank cannot. But even still, highest ranks of play, it's 2-2-2. 2-2-2 is the GOAT. 2-2-2 is the best. 2-2-2 is the composition that you should be playing. And yeah, it's just not close across all ranks. I highly recommend you go check out the Rivals Tracker yourself. You can go in the Team Compositions tab, and you can look and see that compositions that you think are busted are just not. They're not winning nearly as much, and they're not, you know, they're not competing. So I think that this is a really important video so that you can see exactly what win rates are dominant, exactly what's working, exactly what's not. I think this is really important. But anyways, I really hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you learned something. Definitely smash that like, subscribe if you did. Thank you so much for coming by, and I can't wait to see you next time.